Aussie. 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 Angry. Aussie. Angry.
Hey, Sunday night, and there's probably no one here. Although there is a whole discourse from Dr. Abigail in the chat from half an hour ago. She was very tired and sharing said tiredness. Just working out. These cherries have a different characteristic to the maraschino, the Luxardo cherries. I think those are also maraschino cherries, just put together and released by a different bunch. Dr. Abigail, sorry, Alexander, I think Dr. Abigail is very tired and is not here, but it was very cute the way she did the ending each comment in a dramatic way. By the time you read this, I will be dead. Tired, so tired, I'm just dead to the world right now. I'm going to lay down for the last time tonight. I've been asleep for a while. Time for that long nap until tomorrow. And yes, Alexander, it was half an hour ago. It was a whole little discourse she left, which I appreciate, find quite entertaining. And I'm just finishing off one of my clarified cocktails. This one's a comparatively, it's bizarre. It's got a little bit, is it a little bit bitter? It's somewhere between sour and bitter. It's not altogether unpleasant. It's the tea. Yeah, no, it's the, I'm tasting the tea in it. That one has tea. I don't put tea in a lot of my milk clarified cocktails, although that was a traditional ingredient in the original milk punches from a couple hundred years ago. Jeremy, good evening to you, sir. What's news? Well, big question. I mean, I've just had a fairly quiet weekend myself. I always look at what's news in the world. I enjoy doing that. See, are there any interesting news headlines? Barnaby Joyce said Scott Morrison never explicitly said he was also a resource minister. Oh, Barnaby Joyce is a drunken idiot, said the drunken idiot. But I'm not in government, so you know. Police shoot man allegedly armed with knife during welfare check. That's interesting. Sydney Harbour gets $9.1 million to improve marine habitat and water quality. They're going to do living seawalls and kelp forests to lure marine life back to Sydney Harbour. Ooh, depressing world news. 20 killed after gunmen storm hotel in Somalia's capital. Dang. Ooh, there's a creepy headline. 10 out of 10 pain. Monkeypox victims describe excruciating pain as wait for vaccine drags on. And I remember saying that when we first heard about it. Look, monkeypox, while is far more widespread than we thought, and is definitely not good for people who have it, in the grand scale of things that impact society, cause deaths and whatnot, it's still probably going to be, nothing in the grand scheme of things. But the fact that it's already so much worse than it initially looked, like it's probably 100 times worse than it initially looked in terms of spread. Now, that's still, 100 times almost nothing is not much more than nothing. But still, that creeped me out. As I said when it first came out, saying, God, is this going to turn into something? And we'll all go, holy shit, do you remember when we heard about the first cases? And we just thought, that's weird. And now, woo, that's almost definitely not going to happen. I did see that, Jeremy. An episode of Bluey was censored. Was it because of one of the dogs relieving themselves? I didn't read the article. I just sort of saw the headline. I've still, and this is not as a badge of honor or whatnot, is not saying most people who either are the target audience or take care of the target audience say Bluey's really good. I've never actually seen an episode of it, though. Again, I'm hardly the target demographic, neither for myself nor my offspring. Okay. I need to read this article because it's headlined "The Prescient Victorian Document That Foretold the Liberal Party's Crisis." Basically, the Victorian Liberal Party up shit creek. But what foretold it? Mild Monday in Melbourne, 2 days after the federal election, Liberal Senator Greg Mirabella, shell-shocked staff gathered in the Collins Street office. Coalition being swept out of government in Canberra. Yes. Mirabella lost his seat in the upper house. Printed copies of a document he started working on 4 years earlier. He'd forgotten the manifesto existed, but found it months out from polling day while cleaning out laptop storage space on the train to Melbourne from his farm in Wangaratta. Foreshadows many of their predicaments. Okay. He titled it "Fixing the Liberal Party." It had failed to adapt ideologically and organisationally in line with the accelerated pace of social change in the social media world. On issues such as same-sex marriage, in particular climate change, it was no longer relevant. Wow. Someone in the Liberal Party who knows what they're talking about. There you go. This is a killer perceptually, probably a root cause of the decline in our primary vote. Straight-edge former army officer works as the party's Victorian president next month, will use this analysis to reorient the Liberal Party, which finds itself as at one of its lowest ebbs since its founding in 1944. In Victoria, where Mirabella wants to turn the parties around, opposition leader Matthew Guy needs a massive 18 seats to win November. If he fails to beat Premier Daniel Andrews' tired and COVID-ravaged government, it will be the coalition's 6th loss in 23 years. Crises facing Liberals, some of which are shared by Conservative parties worldwide, are manifold. Membership base is ageing. Business community, large chunk of its voter base, particularly women, which splintered to support independence, have accepted a new progressive culture that the Liberal Party seems unerringly at odds with. The state branches are torn apart by factional warfare, struggling to attack talented candidates. Damn. So, to allow progressive movements to harness new platforms to mobilize sway opinions, while the Liberals use social media as a tool to try and win elections in a reactive fashion without really dealing with strategic dimension. Presciently, another problem foreshadows in the Mirabella document, before Zali Steggall or Monique Ryan became national figures, was the threat of independence. Yes, his wife lost mother of community independence movement, Cathy McGowan. Elections are publicly funded. Victoria's last Liberal Premier, Denis Napthine, spent 27 years in Parliament, believes Australians are unfairly discouraged and abused for supporting... God, oh, fuck off. Okay, that's the first thing that's made me fucking snap. Some whiny, self-indulgent, entitled Liberal Party fuck saying, "Oh, these days," this is a quote, these days, and he talks like this. I'm not exaggerating. This is literally, I'm like a recording of him. These days, you wouldn't dare say you're a member of a political party, he said, adding as a consequence, party's membership. That's just so fucked. Fuck off, you out of touch fucking moron. Jesus fucking Christ. It's not being a member of the party that's a problem. It's your party being fucked that's the problem. Jesus Christ. The dude's just part of the fucking problem. Absolutely part of the fucking problem. As a solution, Napthine believes Liberal Party's administrative committee should consider supplementing pre-selections with high achievers in circumstances where there's a narrow field. In recent weeks, the party's picked 3 religious conservatives to top Victorian Liberal Party upper house tickets, which is going to work against them. Unless there's 200 to 500 members selected, it becomes too easy for narrow interest groups and factions to pick candidates that are less effective at representing broad interests. Well, he's actually sort of on to something there. Mirabella explains many membership-based organisations such as Rotary and even Labor are struggling for members in the digital age. Even Labor. Movements that still attract followers tend to be focused on climate and social justice. Greens and Labor at least have support of environmental groups and unions respectively, while the Liberal Party does not. Yeah, take a good fucking hard look at yourself, guys. Needs to be malleable, find new causes. We're the everyman party, he says. Liberal brand isn't travelling very well because it isn't clear what we're selling. Yeah, fucking social conservatism and culture wars and climate change denial. And this guy Mirabella knows that. And he's not a progressive, he's conservative. But he can see the writing on the friggin' wall. We've driven women out of the party, need to do something drastic to fix it, one former Liberal MP said. Yes. Hello, was that Mimsy? Yes, it's Mimsy. Bothering me around my feet. Senior party source who spoke anonymously to discuss internal party matters describes the Liberal Party's lack of talent at a state level as human resources problem born of perennial opposition. That's pretty fucking funny. That they're just going like, everyone in the state party is shit. Being in opposition between 1999 and 2010 meant the party was not attracting... Hello. Oh, Christ. Oh, don't dig your claws in, Mimsy. For fuck's sake. I mean, I'm wearing thick jeans, but... Come on. What are you doing? I just moved so it's easier. She was just trying to claw her way onto my lap. And I'm wearing my thickest jeans, so it wouldn't have hurt too bad, but I don't know. It was a bit of a fucking palaver, quite honestly. Okay. Years, the source said, standout young Liberals chose to become staffers in Canberra and took up jobs in the corporate sector. When he was in opposition leader, Michael O'Brien hoped gun advisors would come back to Spring Street should the Morrison government lose. The migration never occurred. We haven't had transformational leadership since the Kennett cabinet, which is the 90s. Our leaders of frontbenchers are not people who resonate with Victorians. Victorian Liberal Party is something regarded as not to be touched with a 10-foot barge pole. Labor people tend to be more interested in social policy rather than national security or economics, so state politics is a more natural home for them. Come on. Yes, jump up. Don't claw your way up, you little bastard. Ugh. Actually, in relative aging, in there's a word for age thing. Gerontocracy? I knew a word. Gerontology. That's the word I was thinking of. In terms of gerontology, comparative age, and for how long a cat's expected to live, and their relative health at different ages, in comparative terms like that, Mimsy's much older than me. She is very much a senior cat. I guess I'm heading towards being a senior human. Maybe about 10 years before I'm really there. But Mimsy is very much a senior cat. Lived a few years longer than most cats do. Who knows? She might have been... Oh, my God. Got her on medication, which seems to be improving her mood. Hoping... that helps her it's meant to help her put on weight as well. Which I think she might be. Still really burning, feel her every fucking vertebrae and then her hips at the back when you pat her. It's disturbing, is what I'm saying. Tim Wilson, a self-styled modern liberal who lost the Brighton-based seat of Goldstein to a Teal independent, former journalist Zoe Daniel, argues Australian liberals are confronting the same deep-seated quandaries as counterparts in New Zealand, Britain, and other comparable nations. Not in the US, though, where their conservatives are just getting crazier. Centre-right parties, he explains, spent much of last century acting as a counterbalance to authoritarianism and communism. Yeah, good on you, buddy. This instinct spurred a last century's centre-right parties and the market-driven Hawke-Keating government to pursue free market reforms, which fucked us all, you know. But the mission failed to shift in response to the problems of contemporary politics, Wilson argues, leaving the Liberal Party fighting yesterday's battle unable to find field for today's. Party's attachment to the aspirational class of voters is almost hackneyed, but Wilson says the modern Liberal Party has forgotten who fits into this group. We're the party of aspiration, but that means your policy has to be geared towards those aspiring. Young people, new Australians are aspiring, not just older Australians that are after security, he says. Instead, we're putting forward policies that entrench power. Menzies was talking about forgotten people, not forgotten ideas. Wilson, whose book, The New Social Contract, outlines his ideas for future foundations of the Liberal Party, that should be subtitled, The New Social Contract, the point of view of a loser. Says Conservatives need to embrace policies that decentralize power, give people control over financial and familial security. Yeah, you're pushing shit uphill there, buddy, when the Conservative parties are bought and paid for by entrenched fucking power bases. He cites the proposal to allow people to use superannuation to buy a house, an idea he championed that was eventually pledged by Morrison during the election campaign. Like, no, fuck you. Conservative writer and commentator Gary Connolly agrees the biggest problem facing centre-right parties is that younger voters, and those not yet of voting age, hold Conservatives responsible for the absolutely dismal sense that they'll never own a home. Yes, and there's a fucking reason. There is a fucking reason to hold Conservative political parties responsible for that, because they fucking did it. Barrister says too many coalition MPs are attached to Reagan-era Thatcherite economic policies. Yes, they fucking are. So's Labour. To be fair, so's Labour for that fucking matter. You can't hope to get anywhere until you break the boomer death grip. Neat. That's also name of my next heavy metal band, Boomer Death Grip. I'm absolutely starting a heavy metal band called Boomer Death Grip, and the style will definitely be death metal. Another former senior federal MP, didn't wish to be named, said the party had failed to explain its philosophy to an entire generation of voters who view the Liberals as simply social conservatives, not championing classic Liberal ideas such as free enterprise, individual freedom, freedom of speech, smaller government. And there is a fucking reason that they are perceived like that, because that's what they are. I mean, ever since the 90s, when John Howard tried to entrench the concept of thought crime in law, he called it anti-sedition, like literally saying the government should be able to criminally prosecute you if they didn't like what you were saying. Like, you did not have to be inciting violence. It's just if you were, in the government's judgment, promoting sedition. And that could be as broad as saying, like, this government is fucked, they need to be out. It's basically, since Howard proposed thought crime in legislation in the 90s, the Liberals have been the party of repression and spying and prosecuting anyone that they didn't fucking like. I'm just going to give Mimsy some more camera time. Hey, Noog, how's it going? Yeah, like giving Mimsy some camera time. Yeah, I feel like I haven't seen you for a while, Noog. I hope you've been fine. Hope you've been okay. It's a tough old world out there. Yes, Alexander, what did you mean for room for a piper in the band? I'm not sure what that meant. Anyway. Oh, my band. A piper in my... I get what you mean. A piper in my death metal band, Boomer Death Grip. Yeah. To which I would say yes. Ever since AC/DC managed to work bagpipes into a rock song, I think he can work bagpipes into anything. A new threat. The Teal candidates. Wah, wah, wah. Pitch themselves as fiscally responsible, socially liberal professionals, the very people the Liberal Party used to attract. And again, the Teals expressly said that. They are Liberal Party people, but the current Liberal Party is a fucking shit show that's abandoned its ideals. Oh, here's a fact. While some Liberals, including outgoing in disgrace QMP Tim Smith, have called on the Liberal Party to abandon inner city voters, describing them as loud, entitled and privileged. Again, Tim Smith is deliberately lobbing hand grenades around to destroy the Liberal Party because he's so fucking angry. They made him resign just because he got drunk and drove and crashed into someone's fence. Just because that was not someone who's fit to represent the party. He was so upset. Napthine never called himself a conservative. Well, he can go fuck himself. Believes that Victorian branch has always been a broader church than other jurisdictions. Matthew Guy agrees, refusing to concede state seats such as Kew, Caulfield and Brighton to Teals. Where we hold seats, I expect to hold all of those and go forward. That's our aim. That's a goal. God, we don't want to lose seats. You're going to lose seats, you fucking loser. Fewer than 100 days to the state election. Polls indicate the coalition's facing its third consecutive loss. Yep. I hope Labor actually gets an increased majority. Fuck them. Connolly calls for US-style open pre-selection contests where anyone can run to be a Liberal Party candidate. Locals who are not members of the party get a vote. He's misunderstanding. In the US, to vote in primaries, you have to be a registered voter for that party. Because otherwise, it'd be like internet trolling. You could fuck around with pre-selection for a political party that you didn't like, and it would be possible to get enough people to vote for a really shitty candidate, which would guarantee that party not winning that seat. So, yeah, I think that person... Oh, no. Yeah, no. He did say not members of the party. Yeah, dude, that's a stupid idea. You are not a smart person. Instead, it's hush-hush. You end up with a quite incestuous and strange party room. And the political ranks don't really represent the base of your party. Yeah, dude, you are not a smart person and people shouldn't listen to you. But because your idea is dumb and stands a good chance of damaging the Liberal Party, I think it should happen. So... Mirabella is a pragmatic farmer who doesn't spend Friday afternoons in Melbourne or Australian clubs where members of the Victorian Liberal elite mingle. He thinks he can build bridges and rebuild trust within the branch. For the best part of the century, it's been characterised by rolling factional warfare. If we spend as much time campaigning and fighting our opponents as you fighting each other, we do a lot better. He's not wrong. He's the one out of all of that who makes sense. Some of them, and because he's willing to stand up and put his name to it. No, you're in Zimbabwe. Interesting. Okay, for a memorial, going to do something. Oh no, you've done something to your back. Oh yeah, Father Time. Ask me about my knees. Jesus. Although they're not as bad as they were recently. But anyway, so off the back of a disastrous fortnight where Matthew Guy lost his chief of staff to a donor scandal, Coalition had its best week in months thanks to a policy announcement. They're going to shelve the suburban rail loop. Guy wants to invest money in the state's overburdened health system. Labor, which has lost grip on the narrative around the mega project and the health system, looked rattled. Opposition flirted with scrapping or amending the project since before the last election. Same sources as Guy has rebranded as Matt. He's Matt Guy, not Matthew Guy. Hip. With Coalition needing 18 cents, few Liberal MPs deny the grim state of the broader party and monumental task Guy faces to win. Health will be a key issue, also deliver new policies of cost of living, which pollsters in both parties believe to be voters' top priority with interest rate rising, real wages falling. Turn these concerns into seats. Guy probably needs to win them in the western and outer southeastern suburbs, where his party has little presence or history. Inner eastern Malvern, Liberal Party state branch has about 500 members. Western suburb of Werribee, it has 60. Average age of members in the 60s. Wah, wah, wah. That's the merit of the challenge that confronts it. That whole thing with the rail. Look, it is reasonable to ask questions of it. The return of video, dude. Okay, I'm just betting that I know who that is. Baptized in restored gospel. Dude, okay. Simple talk. If you're boring, fuck off. Okay? You want to be a boring child, you won't stay here. And hello, Kirsten. And yeah, thank you for saying hello to Mimsy. She appreciates it. Don't you, Mimsy? Yes. Yes, you do. Yes. I really think her medication's helping her mood. She makes less gross, awful, annoying noises. Like she was meowing constantly and not cute meows, which is gross sort of rah, rah. Now she does it less, and the noise she makes are a bit cuter and squeakier. Now I just want you to put on some weight so you're not so bony, because that can't be good for you. You're ridiculously bony. You're the boniest cat I've ever known. Ha. What's the time? Okay, half past, Mims. Yes. What meds is she on? Alexander, I think she was I don't know exactly what it's called, but she was diagnosed with hyperthyroidism, which is why she's so skinny and probably in such a bad mood all the time. And so the medication is meant to counteract that. So if you've got hyperthyroidism, your metabolism runs too fast, you can't put on weight. You can have hypothyroidism, which is the opposite, where your metabolism is too slow and you can't lose weight. She has hyperthyroidism. So it's meant to bring her back into equilibrium. And one of the things it should do is help her to put on weight. Big sooky cat. But look at her. She's being really well behaved. Good on you, Mimsy. So I've got it into my head. Oh, I know what I was going to make tonight, actually. Got it into my head to experiment with some cocktail recipes, get some classics and change the components and see if the balance of the cocktail still works. No, like Shaggy from the Mystery Bunch, Scooby-Doo. Maybe he's just active. He's like, like a weed smoker, and I feel like he always gets the munchies. Maybe he does have hyperthyroidism. Well, that read about the Liberal Party was kind of fun, actually. How a huge lotto winner lost his millions. Won 17 million. Discovered coping with... Oh, it looks very young. He's a New Zealander. By 2020, his well-being had been overwhelmed by responsibilities. Oh, that's interesting. There are so many stories about like winning a lottery is actually creates a bad situation. Sorry, but this guy, he's one that, how do I take it? Because he was a hardworking guy, truck driver, got $90 million. So if you ever should be so lucky as to win a fortune, Mark Lipton has advice. Don't tell anyone. Don't tell your partner. Don't tell your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, best friend, anyone. Don't tell no one. Didn't go out of his way to tell people. It's not in his nature to boast. Some who learned of his good fortune took it as that. Someone else's good fortune. Others who learned of it saw it as an opportunity. He told a guy at the supermarket, then his flatmate cousin when he got back from the beach, and his boss the next morning when he turned up to work. But concentration was so shot, he thought he was a danger driving the truck. Everyone called him Gizalone. Yeah. Oof. I guess if I did, the first thing I'd do is change my phone number. Long line of people looking for handouts. In a state of depression, stress, and frustration. Yeah. Would have been. 2 years later, in a dark place, hadn't gone wild with money. Still in the same rental thing, but the 19 shrank to 15 as he stretched his generosity to match requests made. He gave money to people for what sounded like good reasons, only to find they spent it on something else and come back to hit him up for more. It's a lot like giving away $4 million. That's a lot. $4 or $5 million. Lonely and in torment. A neighbor, even confided, was also struggling. Found someone who could help. A clairvoyant who knew about money. Oh, good God. This is going to end badly. God. Lost $3 million to a shyster clairvoyant. Wowzers. He made a payment of $2.8 million, wound up in the High Court. Helmbright claimed it was payment for services. Lipsham said he sent her the money to buy houses she was choosing on his behalf. Oh, so she literally just tried to steal two. How the fuck is that going to work? Wow, this is all really messed up. Wowzers. This is very interesting. Came to meet Matt Blomfeld, like a showpiece on wheels. Used the same mechanics. Former pizza franchisee fought an infamous decades-long defamation fight. Turned his hard-won skills into legal support business, find solutions to other people's problems. Lipsham's mental well-being was on the slide. The clairvoyant was fucking him up. He's said, I'm just going to let it go. Like several $1 million, just going to let it go. Blomfeld's car was finished first. Those working on Lipsham's car suggested Blomfeld would be an answer to his problems. He's like a pit bull. Talked about the $2.8 million, how they get it back. Blomfeld's search revealed Helmbright bought properties in Northland, slapped legal freezing orders. High Court, lawyers for Lipsham, associate, ordered Helmbright to provide evidence to support the claim $2.8 million was paid for his services. All right, so there was some sort of wow. That's a fucking roller coaster of a story. Hi, Mega Leech. Well, yes, Mega Leech. I also do agree. All clairvoyants are shysters. No, it's fun reading who's gunning for Johnson's position. Yeah, it's a bit dodgy. Holy cow! Sorry, I missed that, Kirsten, while I was looking at it. Husband filling a 20-litre barrel What is he filling a 20-litre barrel with? I'm friggin' fascinated. That is wild. Speaking of which, I need to taste what's in one of the barrels. Been there a week. I want to taste how it's going. Yeah, Noog. Clairvoyant, the one tells you what Porsche will be. But man, how bad was that guy's situation? God, you'd have to, you'd have to not freaking tell anyone. Jesus. Now he feels better. As if there's any money disappearing, I'm making it disappear. He did buy a Lamborghini for 880,000. Jesus. Structure came through transparency. Blomfeld or his staff email regular updates on all aspects of managing a fortune. Gives Lipsham a reason to get up in the morning. Manage his future rather than be victim to it. Wowzers. Fucking roller coaster. All right, so, but still 20 litres of tawny? Holy cow. I mean, that's what I used to initially season my little barrels of tawny. And then it was ultimately a mix of tawny and sweet vermouth. Oh, no, that's New Zealand dollars. So unless you're familiar unless you're familiar with car rates in New Zealand, that actually sounded realistic to me. It would be a very high-end one, but that actually sounded realistic to me. Because if you won Lotto, just buy a place to live for more booze. I've already sort of okay, I can give it away because you're not going to win a Lotto. But yeah, I'd start a distillery, definitely. And buy a place to live. And probably travel. Hey, Safa, how's it going? Yes, because I haven't really traveled much at all in my life. And I regret that. Kids, when you're young, travel if you can. It's worth it. So he bought 20 litres of tawny when you're in South Australia. Got to barrel age it. Okay? So the question, I guess, occurs to me, because, like I said, I used tawny to season the barrels when they were new, which is a recommended process. So is he doing that just to season the barrel, or is he also intending to feel that will be an improved tawny and will then like rebottle it and drink it? Don't buy a distillery. Well, I'm only okay, but that would be the idea, it being a money pit, but a fun money pit. Oh, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I'm only saying that as a really frivolous thing because, I could confidently say not going to win Lotto. And when I say buy a distillery, it would have to be one of those, when the Lotto gets to those ridiculous 60, $80 million. Okay, so Kirsten, it's an actual Ex Sullivan's Cove barrel. Yeah, no, I don't drink beer, so I'm not going to start a microbrewery. I'll start a micro distillery. And I mean, I would assume there'd be like a huge outlay. So I'm literally only talking about, one of those ridiculous lottery jackpots that's like, 60 million and up. That actually just reminded me of something. Right. So the wonderful Mrs. Husband got the barrel. Nice. I think we're already decided, Nog, the distillery would be called Divergent in honor of the number of irregulars on the stream who are divergent in one way or the other, whether it's neuro, gender, or sexuality divergent. Also, I do kind of like that sound. Wow, you reckon it would cost 10 million to buy a distillery? I mean, you can tell I've literally never looked into it, and you know the industry, so I actually trust your estimate on that. Actually, not so much buying a distillery, but investing in one. As I've mentioned before, there was a fundraising thing for a distillery. You could buy shares in the distillery, which I did. The same company that managed that, they advertised another one to me, that it's someone who it's like a subscription to booze, and they're talking about how this is growing really fast. Like they're saying, like they had 250% growth, which is a huge warning sign if someone throws numbers like that about. But yeah. All right. So, Kirsten, you reckon 10 million would be an established one of medium size? See, and now here's me possibly being insane. My thought had been to actually start one from scratch, build one, start small and progressively build the distillery. And that is quite possibly very silly talk on my front. Yeah, no, movies. It's a booze-scription. So rumor has it 49% of 4 Pillars was 40 million. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. That's a big operation, and the investment into that new place was significant. Yeah, although I know how much hard work it'd be, like to the point of this is a terrible idea, but I like the idea of starting from scratch, just like building up a place and building up a team. Like in my imagination, because I do occasionally let my mind wander and imagine, because part of the imagining was I would imagine putting a team together to start to develop it. Almost the first year, I would imagine, would just be planning and development and working out logistics and then starting to build. So yeah, Kirsten, you reckon 5 to 10 million up the higher end if you want whiskey, which of course I do. But that's what I say. It's a very just fanciful notion, and it hinges on one of those stupidly large lotto jackpots, in the 60 million plus. So, but it's just like a meaningless flight of fancy for me. Anyway, I'm going to get my shot glass and try. I think it's the old-fashioned I should be trying now. Anyway, I wrote dates down, so one of them's been in there a week, so I want to try it. Just a little tasty taste. So, okay, what's in here? That's my cocktail that's been in there since the 11th. I tasted that the other night. So that's been in there 10 days now. I tasted that one. That was like a week old. This one is the old fashioned, which went in on the 14th. That's it. That's a week. That's what I thought. Now I've kind of forgotten what the other one is. What's the other one? Oh, it's the banana liqueur. It's been in there since the 5th. Ooh, that's 2 weeks. I think I should taste that too. But whiskey old fashioned, I put in there a week ago. I'll slosh it around to because I've heard the bitters can separate out a bit. Just gonna little taste of that. Okay, you go back there. It's on your little rack. Okay, little taste. I think it's like 6 whiskeys in this. Smelling good. You'll get a nice whiskey if you called 8 p.m. mixed with 7-Up. A highball. Nice, Safi. Cooked stir fry. I cooked chicken. I marinated some chicken earlier today. And I cooked that, and it was good. I got some leftovers. I can make a sandwich tomorrow. Maybe an omelette. Who knows? Anyway. Wow, that's good. Ooh. It's a little bit hot, as they say, as well, because I haven't stirred it on water as you normally would. I mean, on ice. And I got a bit exotic with the sweetener for this. I used like several different liqueurs. Wow, that's oh my god, that's really good. It's like a really fruity old fashioned. God damn, that's good. I might leave it a bit longer. Another week. I love me an old fashioned. Oofed. Wow. Okay. That is shaping up as a friggin' awesome old fashioned. Pretty excited by that. All right. Feel like I should have. I'm going to just taste the banana one because it's been in there a while longer and it maybe should come out. I'll taste it just to see how it's going. Ugh. All right. It's a rum-based banana liqueur. I got this really strong overproof white rum, like over 150 proof, over 75% alcohol. And I got 2 bottles of it. One bottle I just barrel aged that made it much nicer. And the other one I split in half and made a coconut liqueur and a banana liqueur. I liked the coconut liqueur much more. I thought the banana one might benefit from some barrel aging. So that's what I'm doing. Oh. Oof. That is really nice. Maybe she's just noticing the heading, bog dwellers and heavy drinkers, which I just thought was an hilarious thing. Someone shared it online from a nursery, garden centre, and it's for aquatic plants, bog dwellers and heavy drinkers, and I just thought, yep, excellent description. I will allow everyone to self-classify as either a bog dweller or a heavy drinker, or maybe both. Nog, you're going to be Shrek, a bog dweller? Fine aspiration. Oh, God damn, that's good. All right. Oh my God, that's great. Okay, so the barrel aging definitely worked for that. Icy Saracen, can I do a night live session where you try? No, I don't drink even good wine. I am not doing goon bags. No. Megaleech, you're also a bog dweller. Nice. Kirsten, you're going to be both. That's how I see myself, to be honest. Right. Now I'm going to remember what was in this drink I am experimenting with and trying to perfect that I had when I was out on the weekend at the Gin Palace. So it's Geneva, Amaro, Montenegro, Mandarin, sugar, and apricot bitters. I'm going to try it with just bourbon barrel aged gin. Because Geneva is kind of halfway between gin and whiskey. Yes, Megaleech. Yes, that's fair. That's a very swampy name. Megaleech is definitely a very swampy name. Right. So I'm going to make this. So I've just got to go into the next room to get a couple of bottles. Oh, that's who you are.
Lindsay?
Yeah,
Yes.
she was with me for a while.
Well, someone better coming along. Apparently.
Apparently. Fair enough. All right, I needed Amaro Montenegro and my Mandarin cure. Where is this bourbon barrel aged gin? Here it is. Hemp gin, aged in ex-bourbon barrels. Little bit of sugar syrup. I'll just use this one, my apple sugar syrup. And orange bitters. Oh, I need my jigger to measure what I'm doing. Okay. Okie dokie. So we go. A little bit of sugar. Squeak, squeak, pop. Okay. Oops. Probably more than I intended, but that's okay. That is okay. We'll survive. And a little bit of the mandarin liqueur. Doo-doo. All right. A little bit of Amaro Montenegro. Just going down a little bit. And the gin, the main event. Hemp gin. Made by hippies, I think. Let's go the hemp gin. And a couple of dashes of orange bitters. And then we're done. Dash on this bitters bottle is kind of shit. But we'll put that there and stir a drink a bit. Chill it down. Oops, my cherries come off my skewer. Alrighty. Let's see. Speaking of bog dwellers, it's a little bit swamp water looking. That doesn't have as much flavor as the Jennifer had, or as when I did a version that was partly whiskey. I think I might add a teeny bit of whiskey to this. I'm going to leave this here for now. Take them out at the end of the stream. Maybe be a wild man. Put a little bit of my most expensive whiskey, Bakery Hill. This is the one I invested in. This is my most expensive whiskey. Just a little bit of a well-aged whiskey. Like this is 8 years aged, I think, this one. Hey, Justin, how you doing? So, stir in my expensive whiskey. I'm somewhat disappointed to announce my expensive whiskey is not my favorite whiskey. Actually, really not by a way. It's not terrible, but it's not that high up on my list of my favorites, which is disappointing, quite honestly. That's more like it. Tempted to put even a bit more in. No, that's actually really quite good now. I'm going to put a little bit more in. Will I regret it? Will I regret it? Maybe, but just a wee drop. Probably only about 5 more mils. So this was distilled in 2014, bottled this year, so 8 years later. Barrel number 333. This is bottle 29 of 264. Only 264 of these in existence. I have actually had more limited releases than that, actually. But we'll see. Because part of the, when they were doing their fundraising, which I actually invested in, that's to move, because they were in the country and they're moving into greater metropolitan Melbourne. They're moving to Kensington. I'm definitely going to go and visit when they open the new place in Kensington, because as an investor, I get a discount. Well, that's whenever you see, Justin, whenever you see stories of a really high-end transaction for it's usually whiskies, but that's someone money laundering, basically. They're trying to. It's nowhere near as corrupt as the art world. The art world is a fucking scam that just exists to launder money and dodge tax for rich people. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's a closed shop. It's corrupt. Now watch the art scene come after me. They're going to sue me. They're going to try and shut me up. Justin, a bottle of wine can cost $50,000 if someone's willing to pay $50,000 for it. Like there was an outrageous one with a whiskey barrel. I'm going to try and find it. Yeah, it was a single cask of Ardbeg from 1975, sold for $19 million. I saw that as like, that's someone money laundering. That's a fucking scam. Icy Saracen, I don't know what the beer tax you're referring to is. When you buy spirits in Australia, somewhere between half and 2/3 of the cost is tax. The excise on spirits probably got a bit out of hand. Again, I would probably not make a lot of friends in the alcohol trade by saying there should be some substantial tax on alcohol because it is a social ill. It costs money in the community, but it's probably got a bit out of hand. You read that a pint of beer is 15 Australian dollars. Yeah, I don't know. Yes, that's what they call it, the spirit super tax. Yeah, and it's got a bit out of hand. I mean, I wouldn't make big pronouncements on the beer tax in particular because I'm not that well versed in it. Oh man, that's good. Oh, yum. I'm appreciating that. So yeah, so it's that whole thing of taxes on alcohols is a two-way thing. So I think they should be taxed because they are a social ill. The spirit super tax in particular has spiraled way out of control, and it's counterproductive on a number of levels. As there's now so many distilleries in Australia, they're a potential significant employer, an export earner, and tourism generator, and unchecked, the spirits super tax will choke the industry. Justin, drug legalization. I think all drugs should be decriminalized. I think it's ridiculous that, let's say, for example, marijuana is illegal and alcohol is legal. Alcohol is a far worse social ill on so many levels than marijuana. I mean, that's just irrefutable. Like, it makes literally no sense that alcohol's legal and marijuana's illegal. Then, of course, there's a whole spectrum of drugs. I do think all drugs should be decriminalized, and there should be serious rational analysis into which ones should be legalized, rather than, the just say no and prohibition hysteria that's dominated the discourse on drugs for so long. Need a rational, evidence-based, harm-based analysis on what should be legal and what shouldn't be. IC Saracen, we've got a methamphetamine ice epidemic rural areas. That may be overstated. Probably depends what you call an epidemic. There is widespread meth abuse. That is an actual true thing. And I would also have to demur to, I am not an expert in this area, but yeah, whenever I see like media reports or words from politicians about drug epidemics and whatnot, my cynicism senses go off straight away. It's just like, really? Is there really that big a problem? Or is this just something that you can go, ooh, drugs bad, and come up with a really simplistic solution that you tout in the media to make yourself look good? So I'd, yes, demur from making a comment on that because I don't know enough about it. But I will say, yeah, instantly I start to think like, is there really? It's definitely bad shit happening. But very wary about drugs. back in the day in Minecraft. Back in the day, I may or may not have known people in the 90s who went to raves on acid and speed. I may or may not have seen one of those people when I looked in the mirror sometimes. But yeah, I heard that was fun. As like acid to see weird shit and speed to keep going all night. In conjunction, made for big, weird nights. So I hear. So I hear. Drugs are illegal, kids. Don't do things that are illegal because they're not legal. It's just not just cost, but yes, the cost of prohibition is ridiculous, and all it does is give money to criminals. But I think there should be a genuine, rational, non-hysterical look at the potential health impacts and societal impacts. I believe we have not had that in most Western countries. I mean, yeah, the US, more and more states are legalizing marijuana and making money off the taxes. And yet the jails are still full of people, mostly not white people, on marijuana charges. But again, the prison industrial complex in the US is a fucking crime against humanity. Not that it's a huge amount better in Australia, but in the US, it's a travesty. And I'm not actually talking in hyperbole. I think when you look at the abuses, you look at the unfairness of the system, you look at the unevenness of punishment, and the fact that in so many cases it's been done explicitly to turn a profit. The US prison industrial complex is a fucking crime against humanity. It's just indefensible. It's an abomination. Carceral systems generally not great. They tend to be biased. They tend to be unfair. They tend to be incredibly exploitative. But you'd have to go some to be worse than the current US system. Arguably, the systems of incarceration in various totalitarian states in the last century or two, the Soviet Russia, current day China, various fascist regimes across Europe and the Americas, bad shit, absolutely bad shit. Justin, why hasn't marijuana legalization caught on here? Because in a lot of ways, Australia is incredibly conservative. You get this ridiculous idea people like to tell themselves here, oh, we're a larrikin bunch and sort of anti-authoritarian. It's like, no, there is a streak of conservatism and authoritarianism in Australia that is very widespread. But, medical marijuana trials proceed in Australia. And if you look at what happened in the US, there were medical marijuana trials. They were successful, and it was like proven beyond any doubt there was significant medicinal value for a range of treatments where marijuana was useful. And so then it became a thing that you could get marijuana on prescription. And after relatively short time, the medical marijuana prescriptions became a joke. Just like anyone could rock up and go, I feel like I need marijuana. And they'd go, yep, I think you do. And as particularly from what I hear, some older doctors who were basically funding their retirement, and all they were doing, they just set up an office solely to fill out medicinal marijuana prescriptions, and they charged each time. And so it got to the point where the medicinal marijuana was a joke. So states just started legalizing recreational marijuana. Justin, I am very wary of the term nanny state. You can make a case for that in Australia, but it's a term that real assholes use to describe anywhere that has basic protections for people. It's just a term. I personally don't use it. And it's because of the sort of fuckwits, like particularly the ones who call themselves libertarians, where all they are far-right fuckwits who don't want any rules to apply to them. The same people tend to be really authoritarian. It's nanny state when there's a rule that they don't like, and it's rule of law and common decency and law and order when it's rules they do like. So, yeah, just as an aside, nanny state, not a term I use. True, I believe current Russia is very punitive, and probably the prison system there is probably a fucking nightmare. But yeah, I really think you'd have to go some to beat the US system, because it's corrupt, it's unfair, it's biased. It's just a whole bunch of fuckery going on, essentially. Icy Saracen. I'm also incredibly wary of things that start with, it's been reported. I believe you that you have seen reports saying that. But I'm very wary of unverified and unverifiable media reports, and particularly one that fits into a particular ideology or political viewpoint. And everyone's got a fucking viewpoint about the war in Ukraine. I guess my first question is, sending prisoners to fight in a war. Doesn't seem like a good idea unless the prisoners wholeheartedly wanted to go there. And how can you tell? Like, if you go to prisons and say, we'll let you out of prison if you go fight in this war, a significant chunk of prisoners are going to go, hell yes. And then they go, but you're not allowed to run away, and you have to actually fight and obey orders. And they go, oh yeah, I'll do that. It seems like a very high-risk maneuver that stands far more chance of working against you than for you. Safa, I'm not aware of anyone saying there are conscripts on the Russian side. But again, it's that ridiculous joke saying Ukraine's got a Nazi problem. Russia's got a Nazi problem. America's got a Nazi problem. Australia's got a Nazi problem. All of Europe's got a Nazi problem. But yeah, who knows? Sorry, as you said, yes, Ukraine is a clusterfuck. It's not 100 miles removed from the Croatian, Serbian, and Yugoslav wars. You're right. Very long-standing, centuries-long tensions in there. Just in prison systems, a continuation of stuff. It actually literally is. Yes, as you say, the Constitution allows you to force prisoners into labor. Much like, it was a fun thing to point out, because Georgia does it big time. Before he was US president, Bill Clinton was Georgia governor. So it's a fun, true fact. The Clintons had black slaves, probably some white ones too, but they definitely had black slaves working on the grounds of the governor's mansion when they were in power, because that's just how they do in not just Georgia, but I think it's a fun fact that the Clintons had black slaves working the grounds of the governor's mansion when Bill Clinton was governor of Georgia. And by fun fact, I mean truly appalling. Safa, a US porn star in jail. Is that in Russia? Yeah, you get very weird abuses of power all over the world. I see Saracen. Why doesn't the West lift sanctions on Afghanistan? Let them develop like Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, the House of Saud, truly awful, terrible, murderous scumbags. House of Saud fucking suck. And also, politics makes no sense, as I think you're hitting the nail on the head there. Politics is completely inconsistent, regularly in extremely cruel ways. And I'd say a big reason the US and other Western nations don't lift sanction on Afghanistan is a face. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Justin. I said Georgia, didn't I? Arkansas. Sorry. It's actually, as you pointed out, legal to force people into labor, i.e. enslave them as punishment for a crime. So when he's governor of Arkansas. Thank you for correcting me. But yes, it's a fun, true fact. The Clintons had black slaves working the grounds of their governor's mansion. But that's just because you get those road gangs. It seems more pronounced in a lot of the southern states, but it's countrywide. And you get like those road gangs and whatnot. And they're fucking slaves. It's forced labor. It's wild. So, yeah. So for Georgia, people talk slower than who? I think people in hotter areas talk slower. People in Darwin, man. I'm not exaggerating. Yeah, people in Darwin will talk a bit like this. Be very Australian, and they will just talk a bit slower or much slower. And sometimes the strain is even more pronounced and they talk very slow. I think it's the heat that does it. So is Arkansas super rule? Yes, I'm going to say, coming from a position of near total ignorance, but I'm going to say yes. I mean, there's also even what's the Arkansas. Fast facts. The entire population of Arkansas is only 3 million. So the entire population of Arkansas is less than the population of Melbourne. So there you go. What's Arkansas famous for? Had diamond mines. Wow. Didn't know that. Is Arkansas a good place to live? Low living costs, affordable property taxes, nice weather, outdoor activities. So there you go. Arkansas's Wikipedia page. Landlocked state, bordered by Missouri, Tennessee, and Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, and Oklahoma. Wow, they're really fucking surrounded. Surrounded by a bunch of other states. Name is from the Osage. I don't know if that's Osage or Osage. Language. Digiha Sion language. Referred to their relatives, the Quapaw people. State's diverse geography ranges from mountainous regions. Oh, the Ozarks are in Arkansas. And a densely forested land in the south known as the Arkansas Timberlands. Eastern lowlands along the Mississippi and the Arkansas Delta. 29th largest by area, 34th most populous. Capital and most populous city is Little Rock. That's, as I understand it, rare in US states that the state capital is actually the most populous city. Because it's really common for the most well-known city in US states to not be the capital. As opposed to Australia, where the capital cities are like the only big cities in the state. Population of Little Rock. Population. Christ, it's only 200,000 people. That is a fucking suburb in Melbourne. Jesus Christ. Micro, hello. We're talking about the South. No one likes that place. Yes, Laura, that's actually how we got to talking about Arkansas. Because I was talking about the Clintons having slaves, and I mistakenly mentioned them being a governor in Georgia, and it's actually Arkansas. But they did have slaves, so that's fun. Because we're talking about prison industrial complexes and how fucking evil they are. And the one in the US might be the worst. Might be the most corrupt. Might be the most exploitative. Micro, Bill Burr. I bet he puts on a good show. Was it a good show? Bill Burr is a good talker. He's like my age. He's been doing comedy for like 30 years. I listen to his podcast sometimes. Justin. Well, see, what was the worst thing about the slavery in Australia is it was never legal, which I think is way worse than places that had legal slave trade, that Australia did enslave people, but it was never legal. So there was never even the most base protections. It happened to Indigenous Australians and it happened to Pacific Islanders who were kidnapped, most notably to work in the Queensland cane, the Queensland sugarcane fields. It's a practice that had the sort of gross euphemistic name of blackbirding. It was literally kidnapping and enslaving people from the South Pacific. But yes, there were lots of incidents of Indigenous Australians being enslaved. And people said, oh, they went, well, you know what? They were forced to work and they weren't paid. And they would be imprisoned or killed if they sort of arced up about their treatment. Laura, you never go to Arkansas. Oh, yes. One of many US states that are doing anti-trans legislation. No, you absolutely shouldn't feel safe. It's fucked. Justin, the convicts, okay, they were indentured. The convicts were indentured for a fixed term. And yes, that is a reasonable point to make for the period where they were still convicts, because they had maybe some of them had life terms, I don't know. But I think the majority of convicts who were transported had a set term that they had to serve out, and they were indentured, which is indiscernible from slavery. And again, it's a difference between chattel slavery and indentured servitude. They are different, and it's extremely important to acknowledge the difference there. And again, in Australia, for the transported convicts, there was a legal structure around that. They were indentured for the term of their sentence. When Indigenous Australians and Pacific Islanders were enslaved, there was no legal framework around that. So there was like no protection or limit on what happened. Safra, it does get to be a complex thing. Are you first or second generation when one parent is first generation and another is an older generation? Micro, you do get that vibe. Most of the South in the US hates anyone that isn't a straight white Christian. Yeah. Most progressive Southerners don't mind straight black Christians. Go deep enough and it feels like the 1940s. There are probably, even as a straight white male, there are probably whole swaths of the South and the US in particular where I'd feel super uncomfortable and unsafe. So Laura, an Aussie friend debated the idea if there's a gay gene, there might be a criminal gene. Would it have a higher rate in Australia just from the genetics of the criminals? Yeah, it's yes, the investigation into what genetics does and doesn't cause. I mean, logic would suggest if there was a gay gene, it's not a heritable one. And I think that's how genetics works. They're inherited. And so a gay gene wouldn't exist for the super obvious reason. Obviously, some gay people have children and always have. But I don't think that would account for the number of gay people. I could easily be wrong because I'm a long way from an expert in this. So, Kirsten, yes, you're a generation in immigrant. First gen because we born. There you go. All right, I'm going to look up a definition because I just realized. Oh God, typing. Here we go. What does first generation? What does first generation Australian mean? Okay, first generation people living in Australia who were born overseas. Second generation, people who were born in Australia, but parents. First generation versus second generation. Okay, second generation, people with at least one foreign-born parent. Third and higher generations include those with two native parents. So you're regarded as second generation if one of your parents was foreign born. So one of your parents might be, sixth generation or might be Indigenous. If and the other parent is an immigrant, you're regarded as second generation. But if you're third generation or higher, that's two parents native. There you go. That's the generally held definition. See, Micro, that's why I looked it up, because I wasn't sure. So I thought maybe from a certain perspective, kids of immigrants you'd see as first generation, but no, they're second generation, according to that definition. Laurie looked in further. A lot of convicts were found guilty of stealing bread. Yes, it was the transportation to Australia and other colonies was largely to rid England of an underclass. So people were transported on very trumped up charges. What if you were born overseas to expats who always intended to return? Your brother was born in Japan. Well, I think if you're born in Japan, you're not you'd have to apply for Australian citizenship. Although if both your parent, in terms of the generation, yeah. See, I think that's a whole different thing. Yeah, Safa, you're an immigrant, so you're first generation. So Kirsten, your sister's born here. Well, according, and there's probably different people who see it differently, but according to that definition I just read, being born in Australia and at least one of your parents is born overseas makes you a second generation. And your third generation and higher, to be third generation and higher, both parents have to be born in Australia. So micro, if you're born overseas, don't really count to a generation. Yeah, it's subjective. But I think what I was reading was actually the legal definition in US terms. Yeah, you weren't born where you live, so you don't consider yourself obviously. Well, same here. Although it's now Melbourne is the place I've lived in the longest out of anywhere. So, Safa, if your sister was born in Australia, she's second generation under those definitions. Laura, Boris Johnson, born in the US, he has dual citizenship. Well, as we've recently found out in Australia, he wouldn't be able to hold public office here. Brother's birth certificate's in Japanese. Neat. Because yes, Justin, what you bring up there is an anomaly in that definition. If both your parents were, I don't know if this is the case, but let's just say both your parents were born in Australia and then they were overseas and your brother was born overseas, because both parents were Australian born and Australian citizen, they could fill out the paperwork to make your brother an Australian citizen. But in that whole thing about first generation and second generation, he'd be an anomaly. Because let's say, for argument's sake, both your parents were Australian born. If he's born in Australia, that'd make him second generation Australian. But then if he's born somewhere else and then comes to live here, does that make him first generation? That's interesting. That's confusing to me, actually. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Again, it's what you consider yourself, Kirsten. Wasn't born in Western Australia, but consider yourself Western Australian before you consider yourself anything else. Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny, although I don't really go into it. Although Melbourne's the place I've lived longest, I'm a Melbourne person now. But if someone's like, where are you from? I'm not going to say I was from Melbourne. And I didn't have that thing of being born somewhere and moving when I was, a baby or very young. I was born in Dubbo and lived in Dubbo. So that's quite straightforward. So, Micro, if you were Canadian born, wouldn't complain about health insurance, get it by default being born there. Yeah. Just Boris Johnson renounced US citizenship to avoid taxes. I bet he did. There's a whole process to renounce citizenship in Australia as well. But what we found out in the last couple of years, a bunch of people elected to Parliament fucked up and didn't do it right. It's the time 9:30. God, I know I'm not going to have another alcoholic beverage. Kind of tempted to, but I'm not going to. Laurie, don't consider yourself English. You're born at a RAF base owned by the government. Consider yourself British. Makes you interesting when you're really not. I always get all the different definitions of that little group of islands. Like, England is different to Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland, but as I understand, those are all Great Britain. And even I don't think I'm in my mouth. Even Ireland, the republic thereof, is considered part of the British Isles, although standalone country. God, something weird. You know, something had been stuck between your teeth and it comes loose, and it's really weird, just moving around your mouth. Micro, British and English, the same thing. No, they are distinct. England is a country within Great Britain. Great Britain encompasses Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, Laura. Because when you're in Tas, people ask where you're from. You had to remind yourself you live in Sydney. Yeah. Safa uses England's more like state or territory than the country. No, England's a country. And yes, Micro, English people are not Scottish people. Scottish people are not English people. I'll try and get a difference between England and Britain. That's what we want. The difference. Here we go. Britain is the landmass where England is. England's one country. The United Kingdom is 4 countries united together. And the British Isles is even more islands. So, the big island is Britain, but that has the separate countries on the big island as the separate countries of England, Wales, and Scotland. The United Kingdom is the union of England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Safa, they are not countries inside other countries. They are countries next to one another. As I said, Britain is the landmass. Britain is the island. There are countries within Britain, and the United Kingdom is a union of 4 countries. Laura, the negative effects of Brexit may end up pushing Northern Ireland into... Yes, they really might be. Oh, yeah. That would be back in Thatcher days when you weren't allowed to say anything good or suggest there'd be unification. Yeah. Yes, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics had 15 republics. But yeah, Britain is the landmass. The countries of England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland make up the United Kingdom. So, as I said multiple times, the United Kingdom is the union of 4 countries into one entity. So the United Kingdom is not a country as such to union. So if you're all the tea, they're all redcoats. Yeah. Although the tea comes from China. It comes from Asia, China and India. Britannia's not a thing, Heine. I think the Romans may have referred to the landmass as Britannia. There is no entity today called Britannia, despite the anthem that says Rule Britannia. Because the UK is a state, but not a nation state. England's a nation state. Yeah, the United Kingdom, as the name says, is a union. Oh, yeah, no. the peoples of Asia. I don't know the history of tea that well. My very shaky knowledge is it came from China. The tea in India may have actually been put there by colonial Britain, or it may have already been there. I honestly don't know. That'd be an interesting one. But tea growing did spread through different parts of Asia. Well, Safa, like in the Olympics, you tend to get England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland competing separately. Laura, funny thing, British political censorship 80s media couldn't have Sinn Féin leaders' words spoken dubbed. Yes, that was bizarre. That was Thatcher trying to ban anything about a Republic of Ireland. And so Gerry Adams, who was a political leader, wasn't allowed to have his words broadcast on the BBC. So they'd have video of Gerry Adams, but then they'd have someone repeating his words in voiceover, which was surreal. Safa, again, the UK is not a country. It's a union of 4 countries. Sometimes referred to as Great Britain. I'm not sure the legal standing of the name Great Britain. But yes, it's weird, basically. And of course, we are still part of the Commonwealth. I love this. It's talking about English versus British. Sometimes used interchangeably, they mean different things. People from Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland are not English, but they are British. And then it says, Northern Ireland is often considered part of Great Britain. Well, I think it legally is. The Northern Irish are also sometimes called British, though like many things in Northern Ireland, this can be contentious. That's a subtle way of referring to really, really big problems. Laura, that's vaguely, generally accurate, but there is a legal and political difference between a state and a country, and no US state is regarded as a country, and the countries in the UK are countries. But it just goes to show politics is made up and not real. It's conceptual rather than real. So there is sort of no definition where US states are regarded as countries. You would in fact be closer to the definition of referring to the member nations of the United Kingdom being states within the United Kingdom. But again, those are political terms rather than any objective reality. And yes, Micro, the states are able to make their own laws, and it gets complicated where constitutionally, what does the federal government do and what the state government do? Of course, we have state governments that make state laws and a federal government who makes federal laws. It's a whole thing. Oh, yes, we were talking about Gerry Adams, leader of Sinn Féin political wing of the IRA. And I think our state laws don't really have huge differences like that, Micro. But yes, I understand a lot of US states do operate really differently to other US states. So a lot of them do act like little countries. Yes, the US is an interesting thing. Will the US break up? I always recommend if you want to explore ideas of the US breaking up, a sort of sober analysis of things that could happen. Robert Evans's podcast, It Could Happen Here. There's other things in that now, but the original run of It Could Happen Here, which was several years ago, time is abstract and means nothing. But his initial run of, actually, I could probably look it up and see when it ran. Look at my podcasts library. What the fuck? Where's It Could Happen Here? What the fuck is it doing? Oh, that's weird. Did I unsubscribe to It Could Happen Here? I must have. Right, let me go. What are you doing, Mimsy? Don't do anything naughty. It could happen here. Podcast. Um, 2019. Okay, so the original run of It Could Happen Here was in 2019, where Robert Evans explored ways in which there could be a second civil war in the US. And that's a fairly sober analysis of things that could happen. He does not regard the breakup of the United States as a wholly bad thing because he's an anarchist. He also published a novel, I think it's called After the War, as a really good cyberpunky type element of a post-Second Civil War United States. And that's a pretty fucking awesome novel, actually. A lot of action in it. So for what if China imploded? Be dangerous for the same reason a US implosion would be dangerous. Nuclear weapons. So, sorry, Marco. California is a very big economy. They could be their own country. I think in Robert Evans's book, the After the War, I think there's like 4 or 5 big self-declared nations in what used to be the US, and then some smaller sort of warlord factional areas. So you visited DC Marine recruitment, spoke to a Marine when he heard from the UK. He goes, I've got a cousin in Ireland. He's in the Republican Army. Might as well have said cousin in Afghanistan. He's in the Taliban. Yeah. Kirsten. Yeah. No, I thought the novel was good. I listened to his reading of it. He serialized it, read it. I thought it was really good. Lots of foreshadowing because he's writing a second one. Lots of foreshadowing of what's going to happen in the second one. But it's pretty good. Suffered as I don't know. I actually don't know what California's population is. California population. No, you're wrong, Safa. I thought you were wrong. Safa, California has a population of 40 million as opposed to Australia's like 25 million. Australia has a similar population to Florida, which is why so were our COVID restrictions worth it? Well, compare us to Florida, which didn't have the restrictions and was also probably bullshitting with their reporting of numbers, but Florida have 40 to 80,000 more deaths than Australia. So, yeah. Okay. Short answer with Ireland, Micro. Ireland was its own country for a long time. And England wanted to control it. They invaded it. They did a pretty serious attempt at genociding them. They killed half of the Irish population with famine and controlled it militarily for a while. Over the 20th century, there were various attempted insurrections, and ultimately a successful one, which split Ireland in half. You have the Republic of Ireland, an independent country, and Northern Ireland, which is controlled by England. But yes, basically England did all their old divide and rule shit over a period of a couple of hundred years to fuck over the Irish. This is my Irish heritage coming out when I say that. Also, I haven't really discussed this. I am probably going to do way less of these live streams. I've been thinking about it for the last couple of days because these were always intended to, maintain sanity when we had lockdowns and whatnot, and we're not having lockdowns anymore. So I might cut them right back. Like maybe I need to do it on Friday nights, maybe every second Saturday night. I don't know, but I'm probably going to do far fewer of these streams. I haven't decided exactly how many fewer, but I think it's fair to say I'll be doing far fewer. So, Micro, the British, the English, said the Republic of Ireland is evil, or the Irish independence movement was evil because they didn't want to give the Irish independence, and the Irish were far outnumbered and outgunned. So we had asymmetrical warfare, often referred to as terrorism. And particularly through the 20th century, second half of the 20th century, instead of open warfare, there was like bombings. As Laura saying, you lived in Germany, planted by outside your best friend's house. There were civilians targeted by IRA and other splinter groups attacks. The body count is very much on England's side, though, with it's in the millions. So, well, see, that's the thing, Micro. Whether someone is a freedom fighter or a terrorist tends to depend on which side you sit. And yes, whether bombing campaigns are, unforgivable terrorism or a comparatively small retaliation for centuries of oppression depends which side of the fence you're on. It's a whole thing. Oh, Micro, it's so fucking complicated. It is so on. You could argue on one level it's really simple, but in practical terms, it's very fucking complicated. Saying your dad had a mirror so he could check under the car in case they planted a bomb. Avoid paranoid press. Okay, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that didn't work, and that an overwhelming amount of English press was paranoid and, in fact, hatefully bigoted. You say your dad had a mirror under his stick so he could check under the car. He never found a bomb, did he? So was that paranoid if he did that and yet never found a bomb? Okay, see, well, this is one of the complicating factors, Micro. Ireland was a Catholic country. England is a Protestant country. Part of the colonization of Ireland involved centuries of dispossessing Catholic people and installing Protestants in positions of power. And those Protestants have been in power for centuries, and they don't want to give that up. So that's a classic colonizer, practice of divide and rule. England, in particular, exceptionally good at it. Done it all around the world. But yeah, it's complicated because then you get a chunk of the Irish population who were Protestant and want the protection of England because they don't want any retaliation for the centuries of dispossession and oppression. So yeah, no, Laura, you're saying they planted a bomb outside your best friend's house, and you're saying your dad always checked under his car, but he never found a bomb, did he? Okay, so again, and this is the purpose of bombings, terrorism. Big dramatic events have a bigger psychological impact than they do actual impact, and that's why usually that sort of asymmetric warfare, the side that does not have the resources or the weaponry does stuff that's big and dramatic and instills fear, aka terror, hence terrorism. Go up there. That form of warfare is psychological, and it's effective. It's extremely effective. If there's a tiny chance that you could end up being the victim of one of these bombings, because civilians were targeted, so people didn't feel safe. You look at Islamic terrorists now. Very, very, very scary events happened and freaked people out, but statistically, the chance of you being a victim of one of these attacks is so small as to be practically zero. But it could happen. It did happen to some people, and that's very scary. And hence the terror part of terrorism. It's psychological warfare. And again, Micro, I'd be careful about reading too much truth into in Afghanistan, and it was purportedly happened in Iraq too. Women and children being used to get bombs close to US troops. Again, not saying it didn't happen. I'm saying the incidence of it happening is probably completely out of whack. And again, if you talk from the point of view of the people who are on the receiving end of the oppression, in their desperation, they may do things that objectively seem terrible, but they may feel that's all that's open to them in this terrible oppressive system they're part of. So we're also pointing out 3 guys from RAF base in Burnie drove to a mall, came back and exploded. Again, you're talking about military there, and that's a whole different kettle of fish. Again, not excusing it, but I'm just saying, again, you're talking about one incident where I feel like the Irish people might point to centuries of systemic oppression and murder, as I said, bordering on genocide, where the English managed to kill half of the Irish population. And the hunger was not a thing that just happened. It was a thing that was orchestrated, created, perpetuated by the English, could have been stopped at any time by the English, but was deliberately made worse for an extended period by the English, to the point where it reduced the population of Ireland by 50%. So this is not something I endorse, but when you look at a history like that, you could see why some people would think planting a few bombs is not that big a deal, particularly at military targets. As I say, it doesn't make it right, but I can see why people would do it. Oh, Micro, I I wish we could talk shit out, but I worry people are worse now. I think. Oh, again, I'm not that good on history, Micro. We do it. English invasion of Ireland. Wow, the first one was in the 12th century. Jesus. Okay. The Anglo-Norman invasion was in 1169. But possibly, and there's just terrible shit happened ever since then. The hunger, which killed at least 1 million people, was in the mid 1800s. That was possibly the darkest. You know, you want to talk to an historian about what the dark events were. And yes, I agree that it is a negative cycle, Laura. Someone has to stop at one point. And yes, Cromwell was pretty goddamn bad. Cromwell was very big on genociding people. And yeah, Micro, we are literally, shit still happening 800 years later. Actually, I think it's like 900 years later. It's pretty fucked up. But yeah, the hunger was in the mid 1800s. And like I said, that was deliberately created, worsened, and extended by England. And they could have stopped it at any point. They killed 1 million people, and a huge number of Irish emigrated to escape it. But hey, anyway, so I don't know when I'm going to be here next, because as I was saying before, I am intending to do far fewer of these streams. So I don't know if I'll be, I'm going to make a decision somewhere down the line. I don't know if I'm going to be here on Tuesday. I don't know if I'm going to be here on Thursday. Maybe I will. I feel comfortable saying I'll be here on Friday. And in fact, probably on Saturday. So, look out for notifications. I haven't made a final decision. May or may not be here on Tuesday. May or may not be here on Thursday. Who knows? We'll see what actually happens. But I hope whatever happens, you all take care of yourselves, and to see you again sometime. But I will say goodbye for now. Yes, Mimsy's going to jump on me. I'm going to go into. You're going to jump on me, Mimsy. Whatever. All right, we're going to go into bed now. So I'll see you all another time. I'll say.